Thanks, guys, for coming out. Excited to see you here at the ceramic showcase. Today, I'm going to be making a 50-pound pot and doing that in 2 sections, each 25 pounds. I've taken the liberty to pre-prepare my clay. As kind of like a starting thing, usually I like to have a weed burner, like a big, huge weed burner with a big propane tank, so I can really like dry out pots and like move the wetness level. But there's like a police force in here, you know, and if you light a fire inside a convention center, they execute you. So I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to just risk it on the wet pot. So I'm going to make this one a little thicker, and I hope that it works out. So you guys are going to have to start sending the good vibes to the clay. Not me, but to the clay. So starting off, as I'm thinking about doing these pieces, I want to make sure that my bat is stuck down really good. And if you guys work in a community studio, which many people do, the bats always are horrible. So I like to see which side is warpy and which side is like concave and convex. So I want the convex side up so that it's more tight. And then I'm going to use some water and clay to make sure that my bat is like really well stuck down. So as I think about making this pot, I only have one wheel. It's nice to have 2 wheels to do this. So you make the bottom section and then you go over and make the top section on another wheel. But so in this case, I'm going to make the top section first and then come and make the bottom section and then start and build on it. So I'm getting this bat stuck down so that I can then take the bat off and put another one on. So I'll get my clay on there, get her stuck down. Yeah, last thing we want is this piece of clay coming off, because who knows? Looks pretty expensive, all the stuff we can damage here. And special thanks to Georgie's Ceramic and Clay, our local supplier, for providing the clay for the demo. So thank you, Georgie's. Appreciate you guys. Okay. So, it's a weird little chair. Okay. So as I'm getting ready to throw these pieces, I always say start close to where you want to end up. And so starting with a ball, like starting with something round, is really helpful. And doing this kind of clap and turn move, and I'm not turning the wheel. I'm using my clap. I'm kind of like clapping this way. This is exaggerated, obviously, but I'm kind of, clapping like that a little bit. If I do this for just like 30 seconds or a minute, I can actually get the clay like kind of close. Got to turn the wheel on. So you get it pretty close as possible. And then I'm going to start my centering process, which is all about pushing in and up. If you want to make clay get centered, you have to go in or you have to go up in almost all cases, or out. So in, up, or out, you have to move the clay. So my focus on this whole thing is going to be to move a lot of clay quickly, because I don't want to put too much water in the clay. This wheel's been around the block. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. No.
Thanks. So a lot of in and up. I'm coning up is what this is known as, coning up. And I'm going to do this a few times so that I can get my piece of clay nice and round. Kind of a tall upside down bowl shape is what I'm questing for here. One thing that's always nice is to have a couple stool heights for yourself. If you're throwing big pots, it's like once you get up a little bit, it's like, oh, just sit on a taller stool. Makes things a little easier. So in that vein of starting close to where I want to end up, I don't want this to be too low and flat, because I'm trying to make a cylinder that's taller than this. So like, why make it shorter? It's kind of the philosophy. One other thing that I'm always paying attention to is the bottom edge. A lot of times people throw with like the edge that goes like way out, feathers out, but then it's hard to understand like where the pot stops and the bat starts. So I like to have a clean edge down here before I get started. So this is the top piece, and to that end, there's going to be no bottom on this piece. So I'm going to open this all the way to the bat because it is going to become the top, and I'm going to reach my hand down through this way once it's upside down. That made sense to me. Did anyone else? My shoe's going to be so wet after this. So I punched my knuckle down through the center, and as I'm going down, I'm always trying to move it out. And that moving out and down at the same time makes it easier, because centrifugal force is helping me down. If I try to just drill through it, it's a lot harder because I have no help from this machine. This machine is like a horsepower. I have a whole horse running in here, and it can do a lot for my strength. So, and as I do my raising, I keep a sponge in my hand, and I'm just strategically deploying tiny bits of water as I need it. Right now, it's on my outside hand, my right hand. And you can see it, so I'm raising, and you can see where the clay is. It's kind of scraping, so I'm raising with my knuckle here, but then I have this sneaky little sponge down here, and if I want a little water, I can just give it a little squeeze. So if I start hanging up, you're coming up, you start hanging up a little bit, you can deploy a little bit of water to prevent that from happening. So as I'm throwing with wet clay, one thing I'm going to have to be really careful about is not getting too wide. Wet clay wants to get really wide, so I'm going to be like constantly reminding myself through telling you that I want to keep this narrow because I'm working with like much wetter clay than you typically would making big pots. So the symptom of that is hopefully that I won't collapse it, and that I'm going to make this pot for the demo thicker than I would in like my work. So I'm starting to get pretty close. I still have a couple inches of thickness down here at the bottom, but that's because it's going to get like wide and become the top, and also because I don't want to fail. I'm not going to make it that that much thinner. But there is a ton of clay down here that I'll be able to, if I wanted to get it out of there and spend some time to like torch this, dry it out a little bit, it'd be worth about 4 more inches than I'm going to do. But I'm going to probably try to get like 2 more inches out of this thickness at the bottom. Okay. So this is what, like 12, 13? So that puts a finished pot at like 26. Most kilns are 27. So it feels like that's like enough. So this is like going to be kind of the basic shape of what I'm doing, but I need to make a couple final tweaks. One is lumpy clay is weak clay, and using a rib to stabilize the clay is going to add a lot of strength to the cylinder. So I'm going to come in with my rib, and smooth it out. And when I say stabilize, this is what I mean. Just make it smooth. Because in it, clay has memory, and if you have lumps in the clay, little divots, it'll want to divot more. So bringing that into that smooth, this does a tremendous job making it stronger. And if you're having trouble like raising cylinders and getting them like lumpy, they start like twisting at the bottom. Well, maybe before you take the next raise, just take the rib in there and see if it feels stronger before you do the next raise. Okay. So I got my top cylinder, and that's probably pretty good. One thing is, since I'm going to flip this over, I don't want there to be a knife edge down here. So now I'm feathering the edge back out, because that knife edge, just like a score in glass, is like a place it wants to break off. So if you feather it out, then it's like has more of a connection point. It's less likely to fall when I flip this thing over in a very climactic way. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score this. And my line is that I never slip and I always score. And that's true. And the reason for it is because the slip will act as like a lubricant between the two pieces. So there's plenty of water in this. They're both wet. And I'm going to throw them together. I'm going to like raise them together. So as I do that, the clay is going to homogenize between the two pieces, and I don't need to worry about the slip. I only would use the slip if I was joining leather hard pieces. Okay. Always bring a towel. Now, I'm going to take this off and do my next piece. Oops. And I'm going to take the water out of here to avoid embarrassment later, because that's going upside down. Forgot to do that. Sorry. So now I'm going to do this again, but for the bottom piece. And instead of having the rim like this, the bottom piece is going to have the rim like this. So then it's going to receive this piece into the rim, and I'm going to raise up through. And then I'm going to shape the whole piece at once. So that's the plan. Oh, man. It's nice to have a butter knife for this.
Screwdriver.
I got fingers that are like screwdrivers, luckily.
Okay, there you go.
Extremely tough in Willamina, Oregon. So I'll put that there. Then I'll repeat the process that I'm doing. Get a little water. Make sure this bad boy is stuck. One question I have for people is does anybody have any calipers or a way to measure, or even just like a string that we could mark, or a piece of paper that we could use a Sharpie to mark the side?
I'll work on that.
Thank you. We have some time, because I got to do the whole bottom. Awesome. So when I make these pieces of clay, I like to shape them like re-entry modules, if you're familiar with the Apollo. And I do that because this convex surface won't catch any air. You can imagine if it was the other way and it went like this, it would catch a bubble under there. And I don't want that. So I have this re-entry module going on here. So same deal. You already saw it. You've heard the spiel. Start close to where you want to end up. I'm going to do my 30 seconds of clapping to that end. And before I start throwing, I always like to pull my pants up because crack kills. So keep that in mind. Well, I was wondering, I didn't know if there was like over the back. It's like, man, this is going to get a little too intense. Good. Okay, so same deal. I'm going to cone up. One thing, too, is if you're trying to center a bigger piece of clay, and it's like, this is overwhelming, well, start small. Just like this pot, I can start small and center that part. Well, that makes it easier to center that part. Well, and that makes it easier to come down here and center just a little bit more. Then I can have that, keep going down. So I'm breaking it down. So for me, I just like start from the bottom, just whoop, you know, but like when I started that little top part. So that's a good way to center more clay if you're trying to improve your skills. So again, I'm cleaning up the bottom. I'm defining the bottom edge. Coming back through here. Coning all the way up. And as I have this cone, as I push it over, you can hear there's no strain in my voice. The centrifugal force is sucking it down. So I'm using the leverage from the centrifugal force to do a lot of this work so that I don't have to use a lot of my own strength because I don't want to get tired. I'm very lazy, and if I got too tired, I'd have to take a nap. But there's too many people here to nap right now. Okay, so this is like probably good enough. We can't ever really get perfection on these bigger pieces of clay. So a little bit, you're going to have to tolerate a little bit of problem. So this one does have a bottom, so I'm going to have to be careful not to punch all the way through. If I do, I can just drop a golf ball sized piece of clay down in there and, close it back up. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get down to where I think the bottom is about a 1/2 inch thick. Then I'm going to use my needle tool. And if this is the bottom, I'm going to stick it into the bottom. Then I'm going to use my finger to touch the clay and pull it out so that I can see how much clay is at the bottom of the piece. So I'm going to do that. It's about like that, about a 1/2 inch. Cool, perfect. And then I'm back into cylinder mode, raising by pressing together from the outside and inside, and the clay has nowhere to go but up. I like to use my knuckle to raise thick pieces, and as it gets thinner and I need more touch, I'll move to my fingertips. But for now, with this brutish piece of clay, a blunt tool is required. So there's always like a couple of critical raises, like this one and the next one, that get like the majority of the height. And that's good to, if we can move a lot of clay in these critical raises, that's going to be helpful for us. It's also critical not to get too wide here, because we could lose the opportunity to make what we want. So this is a good time also to do a sanity check. And I'm going to just check this. Okay, good. So I'm just right about there. So I have to be sure not to go out much more here. And in fact, when I raise on the next couple things, I'm going to go in and be focused on staying in really good control of the width of that thing. If I want more control, you'll notice that I pay more attention to my body. I'm scooting up, like I want to take a more dominating position over the clay so that the clay doesn't tell me what it wants to do. The other thing you'll notice is my left arm touching the rim, and that's a stabilizing thing. That's on purpose, and it helps that rim, if it's starting to go a little crazy, not go too crazy. Okay. So again, this being really wet clay and a demo, which is going to get smashed at the end. Stay tuned. We're going to smash this bad boy at the end. I'm not going to go any taller. I typically would probably try to do this like 2 or 3 inches taller. So I got to get this tightened up. This bag of clay is really wet. So I use my rib to stabilize. Then we'll use this magical string caliper to fine-tune the This is such an abuse of a Sharpie. It's the worst. I can't even get the cap off. Oof. Okay. It's terrible. I'm sorry, Sharpie. Okay, so this is the perfect situation because this has to come out about a half an inch. And it's way easier to get something to come out than it is to make it go in. So that is a relief. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little sacrifice here because it's a... no, I'm not. Never mind. I was going to cut off some of this because it's a little thinner, but I think I can just deal. Wet clay makes me paranoid. So now I'm splitting this rim to create the mechanism to accept the other piece that I flip over. And I'm going to come in here with my calipers. Oh, God, I lost the end. Oh, it's this end. Okay. Okay. Needs to come out just like a 1/4 inch. It's really close. And this is where you want to be, is close. If you're way off, it gets way harder. So bear that in mind. Planning, what's that? Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's definitely true the bigger the pot. I also don't want this to be super wet. So I'm using this kind of dry sponge to make sure that there's not like crazy slip in there. Remeasure. And we also want this right here to be straight, not vertical, but straight. If it's like this, then you can see like collapsy. So this like straight is engineered, curved is collapsy. Okay. It's the moment of truth. We're going to flip this over. So as I'm getting ready to flip, I'm like making a mental transition. I'm going to clean my hands. I'm a total mess. It's disgusting. You don't want to be like super messy once you make this transition, because I want to come down like this is all going to create friction when I'm coming down in here. So like starting from scratch is always a good idea. And like you learned from Hitchhiker's Guide from the Galaxy, always bring a towel and don't panic. That's also a reminder to myself. But yeah, I mean, I think that's truly though, like being on the verge of collapse and not panicking. I can't say how many students I see. If it's a pot's about to fall over, instead of like bearing down, they like speed up the wheel. They press the gas, and it's like, what are you doing? This, you know. So like, don't accelerate your own doom. Don't panic. Would be a good piece of advice, I guess, for some. A spotter, yeah. Just lay down underneath here, and if I drop it, you can catch it. So the secret to flipping this over, and this is the exciting part. The secret to flipping this over is to do it without gravity. So I'm going to take the gravity off the piece. And you may have heard of the airplane, the Vomit Comet, that like goes up and down, you know? So I'm going to just drop this. I'm going to drop it through the air, and while it's falling, I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to bring it up over my head, gravity off, flip, decelerate. So now I've flipped it without it like flipping over, like, you know, like bending over. And now I'm going to find out whether I did a good job measuring. Okay. Thank you. Is there a wire? Yeah. So now you got to get the bat off, but if you don't have a wire, it's like super hard. Thanks for bailing me out. I didn't know I was supposed to bring tools, so Richie is hooking it up. He's doing the next demo.
The one after.
One after,
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for Richie, I'd be using like string from the street. I don't know what I'd be doing. Yeah. So as I cut this off, I can't just like yard through it or I'll, you know, bend the thing over. So I'm going to get the wire set up in here. And then I'm going to walk the wire through with pressure from the heel of my hand. So I'm trying to avoid putting really any pressure, sideways pressure on this cylinder because it's weak. Okay. So now I have this like big weird thing and I got to make it into a pot. And that's the hard part, really. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this, just kind of check this out. See how on center it is. Not too bad. And I'm going to do just a little work here to get this. Get that seal. So you see how this like is bowing out a little bit? That's bad news. So I got to try to use my rib to stabilize that and avoid that from getting worse. So this would be the time that I would torch it, usually. But I'm going to cheat. The other thing I'm going to do is cut off a little bit of this so that I can get my hand down this hole so I can stabilize it from the back. And hopefully don't let the... Look at them moving the camera. They don't want this. I think it's going to fall over. I'm kidding. I'm messing around. Okay. So this is going to be a great angle of collapse if it does it. We'll see if I can rescue it. So it's like off center. I have my towel and it's reminding me not to panic. And what I'm going to try to do, you remember earlier I said if you go out or up, you can get stuff to get more on center. So my premise here is I'm going to try to make it go out and hope that I can get it to not fall over. I don't know if it's going to happen, though. I need a torch bad. I don't know, my dudes. You know, maybe if y'all start blowing, I know it would be bad COVID policy, but it'd be like a torch. Yeah. Yeah, so hair dryer, heat gun, torch, definitely a crucial piece for making big pots. But I'm going through the motions here of, I have my like strong standing bracing. You see my elbows on my knee. I think I'm going to ignore that weird hole there with my mind. That's the other thing that's nice. So now if I had a tall stool, I could sit on a tall stool and be like super stabilized in that regard too. So that's a nice thing if you're working on these things. Okay. Okay, so maybe something. So I'm going to work on getting a hold of the top a little bit here. And I'm always, because this is like this crazy, horrible spot here, I'm going to be watching that. So my plan is I'm going to work on the top, get it like kind of done, and then I'm going to come back here and try to rescue this little spot, like last thing, and then be like, like finish a house of cards. If that's the last card on the house of cards I'm building here in front of you. So your face is like super stable because it's what keeps your eyeballs like looking around. So I always suggest if you want to like work up high to stabilize off your chin or your face, your lips, close to your eyes. So I'll catch a little bit more raising over here. And this is kind of one of these things about making big pots is like it's kind of freaking you out like bad times. But the key with making big pots is to use the throwing process and the raising process to make things better. So many times like you're working on pots is like, and by the time you get out to the end, it's like you're just trying not to fail in the last thing. And as you make these big pots, they're thicker. So the raising process centers stuff. The rib gets stuff more on center, gets stuff more smooth. And that's the like kind of the thing to learn, the philosophy difference between making big pots and little pots, I think, for me. You guys have any ideas about how we should smash this at the end? Should we like flip the whole thing or like maybe everyone punch it at once or like what are we thinking? Try to throw it? You want it to be thrown? Do you want to throw it? Do you want to break it? You don't want to come in? You want to get inside it and I'll throw you and the pot? No? It's like an airbag. You'll be fine. Okay. Well, think about it. So what I'm doing here is I have funk, and I want it out, so I'm raising the funk up, and then I'm cutting the funk off so I don't have to deal with it. It's a lot easier to cut the funk off so I can get the funk out, and then I don't have to have any funk in my life. Okay. So it is pretty crazy on the inside, and this is a pretty crazy pot. But now I'm going to go through some shaping process, and I'm going to do a little hand clean. And hopefully we can come out of this with like a jar of some kind that we can smash with somebody inside or not. Who knows? Got to be careful. I'm doing mask mouth. You know, we go like. Can't be doing that during a TED Talk, you know? What's our time look like? Am I cool here? Okay. 23 minutes left. We'll be well smashed by then. Speaking of smashed, we have free East Creek koozies over at the East Creek booth. Please, they're red. They're beautiful. Get one for your ice cold beverage and come out to East Creek and I'll put a beverage in it for you. And then you can learn how to make big pots just like this. Or you can just like take my pots and paint them. You know, it's like very chill. Make a wood-fired pizza. Stay in a tiny cabin in the woods. Pet a dog. We got chickens. You know, it's just like the whole forest fantasy. Come on out. And we have torches there. So we don't have to deal with this wet cream cheese stuff. Hit it with the torch. So because it's so soft, I'm going to go pretty simplistic on the form. And think of just kind of a jar vessel with a small neck. The other thing is I'm throwing these, I'm always thinking about, well, I just want the pot that I want to be inside the pot that I have, because I can trim it. So like bumps and lumps and stuff, it's all good. As long as the pot that I want is inside the pot that I have, I'm going to be okay. So I generally get a little quieter as I work towards the finish because I have to like hold really still. Lame, I know. And again, I'm focusing on raising that funk up, cutting the funk off, and getting the funk out. It's nice to have enough clay up here to make a rim that is like a little thicker. A huge pot with a knife edge rim is like kind of weird, you know, because it's like, oh, it's hard to get that up there, so you really pushed it, huh? So I'll get my rim kind of close to completion here, and then I'll finish up the shoulder. The last part I'm going to finish is this part, because that's where the most vulnerability to gravity is going to occur. Okay, so I'm getting pretty close. I'm just going to make a little tweak to the shape. I would also spend a little bit more time like refining this in my own studio, like the boring stuff. But who wants to see the boring stuff? You know, it's a demo. Make it thick and dirty. So then as my last move, I'm going to trim it right now. I prefer to trim when it's wet because the clay's a lot softer when it's wet. I'll just use the tip of my wood rib here to establish an edge and then push down through. And I can also use a wood knife for this and cut down through this way. One thing is I make these in my studio. I leave them on the wheel to dry. I dry them to leather hard on the wheel, and I trim them with a trimming tool at leather hard upright. You cannot flip these upside down. I mean, I think. Maybe you could. Never say never. But I mentioned before, I think that I'm pretty lazy, so I try not to do much trimming. Or I try to minimize my trimming if I can. But yeah, consider, this was like as close as I've come to a real disaster for quite some time. So considering that, I feel pretty decent about how this came out, and I appreciate you guys watching it. So now the real question is, how should we smash this? So do you want to help me smash it? You don't want to help at all? Nothing? Are you sure? Okay. Okay, well, maybe we'll try to flip the whole thing. Maybe I'll see if I can get it off and flip the whole thing. That might be kind of fun. I think I'm going to do it over here so I have easy cleanup. I would never do it on top of John's cord. There's a cord right here. I would never, ever drop it on top of the cord, in case anyone's wondering. Okay, 50 pounds. I'm going to flip it. You guys, it's like Splash Mountain for you guys in the front, all right? You guys ready? Okay. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh. Hey! The masterpiece. This is pretty good, actually. Maybe we save this. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being at the OPA showcase. Buy some pots. You want to step on it now? Boom! Woo! Hey, all right. I knew you'd suck in eventually. It's so fun. Yeah, anyone that wants to put a fist in this, come on and do it. Now's the time.